I froze when I walked into that church and saw my best friend standing at the altar, marrying my husband. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily. I'm a 32-year-old nurse from Ohio, and I never imagined I would walk into a scene like that. The moment I pushed those church doors open, everything inside me went quiet. The music, the guests, the whispers, they all disappeared. All I could see was Lauren, the girl I grew up with, the girl who once slept on my bedroom floor during storms, standing there in white. And beside her was Jacob, the man I promised forever to. It felt like my heart left my body. I couldn't breathe. For a second, I wondered if I had walked into the wrong place, or if I was dreaming. But no. It was real. Their hands were intertwined. They looked at each other with the kind of smile Jacob used to give me. My knees felt weak, and I held onto the back row pew just to stay standing. I didn't scream or make a scene. I didn't run toward them demanding answers. I just stood there, frozen, because the shock was too big. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge or anger. I was thinking about every memory I shared with both of them. Every holiday dinner. Every movie night. Every time Lauren promised me she would never betray me. Every time Jacob said he loved me and only me. I remember turning around slowly, trying not to make a sound. I didn't want anyone to see the tears gathering in my eyes. I made it outside before they fell. The cold air hit my face, and that's when the reality truly sank in. The two people I trusted most in this world had made a whole new life together behind my back. And they didn't even have the courage to tell me. I sat in my car for almost an hour. I couldn't start the engine. My hands were shaking too badly. I kept asking myself how long this had been happening, how many times they had lied to me while looking me in the eyes, how many moments I brushed off because I didn't want to seem jealous or insecure. I felt stupid, embarrassed, and completely alone. But more than anything, I felt broken. When I finally drove away, I wasn't the same person I had been that morning. Something inside me had snapped. Not in a violent way, but in a clear, painful, undeniable way. I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't wait for answers that would never make sense or apologies that would never be sincere. I had walked into that church by accident. But walking out was a choice. It was the moment I realized I was done being the person everyone took for granted. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew this: whatever happened after that day, I wasn't going to let their betrayal define the rest of my life. I met Lauren when we were both 17. We sat next to each other in a high school English class, and by the end of that week, we were already sharing snacks, secrets, and stupid jokes only we understood. She quickly became the sister I never had. We went to the same college, worked our first part-time jobs together, and even moved into the same apartment complex so we could stay close. I trusted her with everything: my worries, my plans, my hopes. She was the person I called when something good happened and the person who showed up when something bad did. When I met Jacob a few years later, Lauren was the first one I introduced him to. She hugged him like she had known him forever, and she told me I finally found someone who loved me the way I deserved. Back then, I believed her. Jacob was kind, patient, and funny. He brought flowers for no reason and always made sure I ate dinner after long nursing shifts. Our relationship grew fast, but it never felt rushed. It felt right. Lauren was there through all of it. She helped me choose my wedding dress, sat with me while I wrote my vows, and stood right beside me when I walked down the aisle. She cried harder than my own mother during the ceremony. After the wedding, she even joked that she had gained a brother, and Jacob laughed, agreeing. I didn't see anything strange about how comfortable they were with each other. I took it as a sign that my life was falling into place. For years, the three of us were almost like a small family. Holidays were always spent together: Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, 4th of July cookouts. Lauren didn't have many relatives nearby, so Jacob and I always welcomed her. She brought desserts, helped decorate, and stayed late to clean up. She fit so easily into our world that I never once questioned her intentions. I truly believed loyalty ran deep between the three of us. Even small things felt special. Game nights at our house. Road trips to nearby towns. Late night talks on the back porch while Jacob grilled and Lauren mixed lemonade. It all felt natural and comfortable. I trusted both of them completely. They never gave me a reason to doubt anything. When life got stressful, like when I worked back-to-back night shifts, they took care of things together, picking up groceries, planning small dinners, helping around the house. I appreciated it so much that I often told people how lucky I was to have not just a good husband, but a best friend who cared about my marriage as much as I did. Looking back now, I can see how blind I was. But at the time, all I saw were two people who meant the world to me. Two people I would have defended with my whole heart. Two people I never imagined could hide anything from me. I trusted them completely, and that trust became the foundation of my life. I had no idea that same foundation was already cracking beneath my feet. It started with small things, the kind of things you notice but brush off because you trust the people involved. Lauren began showing interest in Jacob in ways she never had before. At first, it seemed harmless. She would offer to help him pick up supplies for the house or volunteer to tag along when he said he needed to run an errand. She made it sound casual, like she was just trying to be helpful, so I didn't think much of it. But after a while, it became more frequent than normal. Sometimes she would text him for advice, mostly about things she had never asked him about before. She'd ask him which car brand she should get serviced at, what color she should paint her guest room, or what he thought of a movie she watched. Jacob would show me the texts sometimes and laugh, saying she just trusted his opinion. I tried to laugh along because I didn't want to seem paranoid. She was my best friend, after all. I thought she would never cross a line. But the texting didn't stop. It slowly shifted into little conversations that happened without me knowing. I would walk into a room and see Jacob putting his phone down quickly or hear the vibration of a new message late at night. He said it was nothing and that Lauren was just being Lauren. I told myself I was imagining something that wasn't there. Then she started showing up at our house without warning. Sometimes she had a bag of takeout food, sometimes a movie she wanted us to watch, sometimes no reason at all. She'd say she was in the area, even though she lived 20 minutes away. If Jacob was home, she'd greet him first and start talking to him before she even looked at me. She'd ask him about his day, joke with him, and walk into the kitchen like she lived there. I told myself it was just her personality, comfortable, loud, friendly. It was easier to believe that than to accept the uneasy feeling growing in my stomach. There were moments when the three of us would be in the same room, and I'd catch her watching Jacob a little too closely. Or she'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was tired from work, stressed, or being sensitive. I didn't want to be the kind of wife who questions every small thing. It wasn't who I was. One evening, I came home early from a shift and saw Lauren's car in our driveway. I walked inside quietly and heard them laughing in the living room. Nothing was happening, no touching, no whispering, just laughing. But something about the scene made my heart twist. They looked too comfortable. Too connected. Jacob smiled when he saw me, and Lauren jumped up to hug me like everything was normal. I forced myself to smile back, telling myself I was the problem, not them. I pushed every doubt to the side because I believed in our friendship and my marriage. I didn't want to imagine anything worse. I didn't want to see the truth that was slowly forming right in front of me. Everything began to change so quietly that I didn't realize how far things had slipped until it was already too late. Jacob, who used to come home excited to tell me about his day, suddenly started acting like he lived a different life after work. He claimed he had to stay late for new projects or unexpected meetings, but he never gave details. He would walk in tired, distracted, and distant, like he was somewhere else even when he was standing right in front of me. His phone, which he used to leave anywhere without a second thought, became something he guarded like a secret. He kept it face down on the table, carried it into the bathroom, and turned off the screen quickly if I walked by. When I asked if everything was okay, he would sigh and say he was stressed, nothing more. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that the man I married was being honest. But the more he repeated the same word, stress, the more I felt like he was hiding behind it. Nights became especially hard. Jacob started sleeping in the guest room. He said he couldn't rest properly and didn't want to disturb me with his tossing and turning. At first, I tried to be understanding. I brought him tea, checked on him, and even offered to switch rooms if he wanted more space. But he didn't want to talk. He didn't want comfort. He just wanted distance. And even though he never said it directly, I could feel the wall growing between us. Lauren's behavior changed at the same time, almost like they had both rehearsed it. She went from showing up uninvited to barely wanting to see me at all. Whenever I asked her to hang out, she suddenly had a work shift, a headache, a family dinner, or some vague task she had to finish. She didn't ask about my life anymore, didn't check on me, didn't even return calls the way she used to. Our conversations became short, cold, and awkward, as if I was bothering her by reaching out. The shift was so sharp that it felt like I had done something wrong without knowing what it was. I tried to talk to her about it once, but she brushed me off, saying she was just busy. Then she changed the subject so quickly it was clear she didn't want to talk about anything real. There were nights I sat alone on the couch, staring at the dark hallway that led to the guest room, wishing Jacob would come out and sit next to me the way he used to. There were days I stared at my phone, hoping Lauren would text me something, anything, that felt normal. But nothing came. My home felt different. My friendships felt different. My marriage felt different. And yet, no one was telling me why. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a quiet storm, watching everything I loved shift into something unfamiliar. Part of me wanted to confront them. The other part was terrified of the answers I might hear. So I stayed silent, hoping things would go back to how they were. But deep down, I already knew something had broken. And it wasn't going to fix itself. It happened on a weeknight, one that started out completely normal. I came home from work, made dinner, and expected Jacob to walk in late the way he had been doing for weeks. But instead of being late, he came home early. The moment he walked through the door, I could tell something was off. He didn't greet me, didn't look at me, didn't ask about my day. He just went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. I waited a few minutes before following him, thinking maybe he had a rough day and needed a moment. But when I opened the door, I found him packing a bag. Not a small one, not an overnight bag, his big travel bag. The one he used for long trips. My stomach dropped. I asked him what he was doing, and he didn't even pause. He kept folding his clothes and stuffing them inside. His voice was flat, almost emotionless, when he said he needed space and couldn't stay here anymore. No explanation. No discussion. No attempt to work through anything. Just space. I asked him where he was going, how long he'd be gone, and what had pushed him to this point. He avoided every question. He wouldn't look at me. It felt like he was already gone even though he was still standing in front of me. When he finally zipped up the bag, he walked out of the room like I was a stranger. At the door, he paused for 1 second, but he never turned around. Then he left. I stood there frozen, unable to move, unable to make sense of any of it. I waited for a call or a text, something to explain what had just happened. But nothing came. The next morning, I called his mother, hoping maybe he went there. She answered the phone with a cold, rehearsed tone, the kind you use when you expect a call you don't want to take. She told me Jacob was fine but refused to say where he was. When I pushed, she snapped and said he needed privacy. His father wasn't any better. He barely spoke before telling me Jacob would reach out when he was ready. It was like they all knew something I didn't. I tried calling Lauren too, thinking maybe she would comfort me or at least listen. But she didn't answer. She didn't return my calls. She didn't respond to my messages. She went completely silent, the way someone does when they're hiding something. It hurt more than I expected, a knife twisting deeper each time I checked my phone and saw nothing from her. Days passed, and the silence from both of them felt like a heavy weight on my chest. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. I walked around the house feeling like a ghost in my own life. Every empty room reminded me that Jacob had left without giving me a chance to fix anything. And Lauren's silence felt like betrayal wrapped in fear. The truth was hanging in the air, close enough to touch but still not visible. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I could feel it in my bones. Something was terribly wrong, and whatever it was, I wasn't meant to find out yet. But I would. One way or another, the truth was coming. A few quiet weeks passed, but they didn't bring peace. They only brought more confusion. Jacob never called. Lauren stayed silent. His family acted like I didn't exist. Every day felt heavier than the last, and I kept wondering how a life I built with so much care could fall apart without a single explanation. I tried to keep going, work, meals, sleep, but nothing felt real. I was just moving through the days, hoping for a sign, anything that would tell me what I was supposed to do next. Then one afternoon, I found a single white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. No name. Just my address written in handwriting I didn't recognize. For a moment, I thought it might be a mistake or maybe a late bill. But when I opened it, a small white card slid out. A wedding invitation. I remember staring at it without understanding what I was looking at. The card was simple, with gold lettering and soft designs along the edges. It looked peaceful and elegant, the kind of invitation meant for a beautiful moment. But the second my eyes reached the names printed in bold letters, my whole world stopped. Jacob. And Lauren. My hands started shaking so badly that I had to sit down. I kept rereading the names, hoping I had misunderstood. But there was no mistake. It was right there in front of me, Jacob marrying Lauren. My husband. My best friend. Together. And the worst part? The wedding was scheduled for the same week. Not months away. Not weeks away. Just days from now. Like they had planned this long before, like they had been waiting for the right moment to reveal everything. I felt a ringing in my ears, like the world around me had gone quiet except for the sound of my own heartbeat. I thought I would cry, but nothing came out. I was numb. Too shocked to feel anything. Too overwhelmed to react. I laid the invitation on the table and stared at it for a long time. I tried to understand how two people who claimed to love me could do something so cruel. I tried to understand when it all changed, how long they had been lying, how many moments they had shared behind my back. But every question just led to more pain. I thought about the night Jacob left with his bag. The coldness in his family's voices. Lauren's sudden distance. It all connected in one awful moment. They weren't avoiding me out of guilt. They were preparing for a life together. And I was the last person to know. For hours, I sat alone in my living room, the invitation lying on the table like a punch I couldn't dodge. Part of me wanted to tear it up and pretend I never saw it. Another part of me wanted to scream. But underneath all the shock and heartbreak, something else began to rise, something quiet but steady. I needed to know the truth with my own eyes. I needed to see the people who broke me. I needed closure, even if it shattered me all over again. And so, without telling anyone, I made a decision. I was going to that wedding. Not to stop it. Not to fight. But to face the truth they tried so hard to hide. I drove to the church in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. My mind was racing, but my hands shook too much to even think clearly. Every turn I took felt heavier than the last, as if the closer I got, the more my heart was preparing for something I didn't want to see but knew I had to. I told myself I just needed closure. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed the truth, even if it crushed me completely. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw the white church in front of me. It looked peaceful, calm, almost beautiful. But I knew the beauty was a lie. I stepped out of the car, my legs weak, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I walked toward the entrance slowly, as if moving any faster would make the world collapse around me. The church doors opened, and I froze before I even fully stepped inside. My body wouldn't move. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. Lauren was there, at the altar, wearing my dream wedding dress, the one I had spent months imagining, picking out flowers and decorations in my head. She smiled at Jacob the way I used to think only I could make him smile. She looked happy, confident, like nothing was wrong at all. And Jacob, he stood there, looking at her the same way he used to look at me. His hand in hers, their eyes locked. The kind of look that tells you everything, the kind of look I thought I shared only with him. I could feel my chest tighten, my lungs refusing to work properly. My mind screamed at me to turn and run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The guests were seated, all looking toward the altar, completely unaware of the storm building inside me. I wanted to yell, to stop them, to throw myself in the middle and demand answers. But even as that thought crossed my mind, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had taken the air out of the room, leaving me trapped inside my own body. Tears welled up, but they didn't fall. My hands shook, my knees buckled, and I gripped the pew in front of me just to stay standing. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, to do something, but I was frozen. Every memory of trust, every moment of love, every laugh and joke I had shared with both of them flashed through my mind like a cruel slideshow. I realized then, in that unbearable silence, that everything I thought I had was gone. The life I believed in, the friendship I cherished, the marriage I devoted myself to, they were all illusions. They had built a new world without me, and I was watching it happen, powerless to stop it. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of my own heartbreak, I understood something terrifying and clear: I had lost them both. But even in the crushing weight of betrayal, I knew one thing: I wouldn't let this moment define the rest of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't run up to the altar. I didn't cry in front of the guests. I just turned around and walked out. Every step felt heavy, but steady. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I needed a plan. The shock was still there, but beneath it, a quiet determination began to grow. They had humiliated me, betrayed me, and stolen my life. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, not quietly, not without consequences. That night, I called a lawyer I had used years ago for a minor matter. I explained everything: the betrayal, the sudden disappearance, and the invitation to a wedding I never expected. The lawyer listened quietly, taking notes, and then told me the truth: there were ways to hold them accountable, especially if I had proof that Jacob had misused our finances. That conversation sparked something inside me. I realized that while I couldn't undo the past, I could protect my future and make sure they didn't walk away unscathed. Over the next few days, I started digging. I pulled out old bank statements, credit card records, and tax documents. Every small irregularity I had noticed before, payments I didn't remember, charges that didn't make sense, suddenly made sense. Jacob had been using my name to make loans, hide expenses, and cover bills I had no idea existed. I made copies, organized everything, and documented it carefully. I wasn't going to leave a single mistake. I also reached out to people who knew about their plans. Friends, neighbors, even coworkers who had overheard things. They all became part of my quiet investigation. Some were hesitant at first, afraid of getting involved, but once I explained what had happened, they offered statements and proof of what they had seen. Everything added up. Everything painted a picture of betrayal, not just personal, but financial too. And then there was Lauren. I started collecting evidence of her role in it all. Messages, witnesses, and timelines showed that she had known more than she admitted and had actively participated in Jacob's deception. I wasn't out for revenge in a dramatic, public way. I was preparing a silent storm that would hit them both where it hurt the most: their reputations, their finances, and their lives. Every night I went through files, made notes, and prepared for the moment when the truth would be revealed. I felt my anger slowly transform into focus. The betrayal had almost destroyed me, but now it was my weapon. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them walk away smiling. And in that quiet, determined way, my revenge began, not with shouting or confrontation, but with preparation, evidence, and patience. I was ready to make sure that everything they had built on lies would come crashing down. Emily waited patiently for everything to line up. She knew the lawyer would not move unless every detail was checked twice. She spent days giving statements, organizing paperwork, and making sure no part of her case could be questioned. She kept her phone away, ignored Jacob's attempts to contact her through mutual friends, and focused only on the process. When the lawyer finally confirmed that all documents were ready, she felt a quiet strength settle inside her. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. A few days after the wedding, Jacob and Lauren left for their honeymoon, posting happy pictures online, acting like nothing could touch them. Emily didn't react. She knew what was coming, and she knew it would reach them when they least expected it. While they smiled for photos and enjoyed expensive dinners, the legal team prepared the full package: divorce papers, fraud reports, and financial claims, all backed by solid proof. On the second day of their trip, a process server approached them at the resort. Jacob looked confused at first, then shocked, and finally pale as he read the documents. Lauren stood next to him, frozen, her smile gone. They were forced to read everything: the fraud evidence, the bank statements, the witness accounts, and the request for full compensation. Emily had not exaggerated anything. She simply revealed the truth they tried to hide. The company Jacob worked for received the fraud report at the same time. An internal investigation was started immediately. When they reviewed the records and saw how he mixed Emily's information with his own accounts, they suspended him. Within days, they terminated his employment completely. The company wanted to distance itself from anything that could harm its reputation. Jacob lost not only his job but also the trust he had built there over years. Lauren realized she was also affected. The engagement ring Jacob gave her, the wedding expenses he proudly paid for, and even part of their honeymoon bookings were traced back to accounts connected to Emily. Since the money came from fraudulent activity, everything had to be returned or compensated. The ring, which Lauren had been showing off to everyone, was listed in the settlement documents. She had no choice but to hand it over. The wedding expenses, which she thought were gifts, turned into debts that now followed them both. Emily received full credit for those amounts. While they dealt with chaos, Emily stayed calm. She didn't gloat or check their social media. She simply completed each step her lawyer asked for. She didn't need to confront them in person. The consequences were already doing the work. Jacob realized he had not just betrayed someone emotionally, he had destroyed his own future. And Lauren, who entered the marriage with confidence, now stood next to a man whose life was falling apart. Emily didn't celebrate. She just breathed normally for the first time in months. She walked into her house with a quiet sense of justice. The truth had caught up with them, and she didn't have to raise her voice or cause a scene. Everything they tried to hide had finally returned to them, and she had moved one step closer to the life she deserved. A year had passed since the wedding that had shattered my world. I moved into a new apartment, smaller than the house Jacob and I once shared, but it was mine. Every corner felt like a fresh start. The air smelled clean, the walls were my own, and for the first time in months, I felt calm. I wasn't just surviving, I was finally living again. The months of pain, confusion, and betrayal had slowly been replaced with clarity and strength. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't depend on anyone else's lies or mistakes. I heard through mutual friends that Jacob and Lauren's marriage was already crumbling. The honeymoon, which had seemed perfect on the surface, had only lasted a few months. The money problems from the fraud cases, combined with constant arguments about trust and guilt, tore them apart. Jacob struggled to find a new job, and Lauren couldn't cope with the pressure and shame of what had happened. Their smiles, which once felt like knives in my chest, were gone. They were facing the consequences of their own choices, and I didn't have to do anything but watch from a distance. Sometimes I thought about how angry I had been in those first weeks after discovering the betrayal. The loneliness, the heartbreak, the fear, I had felt it all. But now, looking back, I realized that anger wasn't what gave me strength. Patience, clarity, and letting the truth take its course, that was what mattered. I had trusted the right people to handle the legal and financial consequences, and in doing so, I avoided letting revenge consume me. I didn't need to humiliate them in public, yell at them, or beg for acknowledgement. The truth was louder than any confrontation I could have staged. I started to focus on myself fully. I threw myself into my work, took weekend trips to places I had always wanted to see, and spent time with people who genuinely cared about me. Friends who had stayed by my side reminded me that trust could be rebuilt, but only with people who deserved it. Slowly, I stopped thinking about Jacob and Lauren every day. Their mistakes were theirs to live with, and I didn't need to carry that weight anymore. Every night, I would sit by my window, looking out at the city lights, and reflect on how far I had come. The pain hadn't disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled me. I had regained my confidence, my peace, and my sense of self. I had learned that betrayal could hurt deeply, but it could also teach you resilience and wisdom. In the end, I didn't need to seek revenge. Life itself had done that for me. Jacob and Lauren were paying the price for their lies and betrayal. And me? I had my life back. Stronger, wiser, and free. I realized that letting the truth do its work was more powerful than any action I could take, and it had destroyed the people who hurt me, without me ever needing to lift a finger.